Hey, it's the Birth Besties. I'm Crystal, and that's Michaela. I swear that's Michaela with her sick voice.
I have such a deep voice right now.
So tonight we're spending a little time talking about the U.S. maternity care system. We spent some time this week on the page talking about things like C-section rates and induction rates and how much money we spend in the U.S. here on maternity care. So we're going to kind of go through it, some facts versus fiction, and give you some tips for just navigating it.
Yeah, there's so much information out there.
So I guess I will go first. So you go.
All right, I was just going to say there's so much information out there. It's really hard. My voice is so annoying. It's really hard to figure out what is truth and what is just media.
Right. Yeah, so 1 in 3 women will have a C-section. So what does that mean? Is that really a life-saving practice? And the answer is no. The World Health Organization says anything above 15%, there's no correlation with improved outcomes. So the World Health Organization basically states that the U.S. maternity care system is in a crisis and that there's a public health issue because our C-section rate has exploded since the 50s.
Right. And I mean, why do you think that is? Is it because is it because modern medicine are we using it to save lives, or are we using it to control the situation?
Well, the World Health Organization and other agencies like that definitely agree that we're using it to try and control situations. And unfortunately, with the way that the healthcare system is designed, doctors want to get paid for their patients. So there's this pay situation where, well, you've been my patient for X amount of visits, I want to deliver your baby because then I get paid. So that's one thing. And two, I think.
So here's the thing. I mean, I myself am a proponent for modern technology, and especially Western medicine when it comes to birth, as I am a cesarean baby. And if I was not born by cesarean, either my mom would have probably died or I would have, or both in that situation, because I was so premature. My mom went into labor with me on an airplane. And so I value the fact that we have the option for cesareans. However, many times they are performed out of convenience or scare tactics. Mm-hmm. And so we want to educate you so that you can make an informed decision on whether you should or should not have a cesarean. We're not here to tell you should not have a cesarean section. But instead, if that question comes up, you'll know how to answer whether it's the right decision for you and your baby.
Right, exactly. And being educated about the real world statistics of what's kind of taking place in our country and in our healthcare system, it makes you that much more empowered. And just knowing the reality of the situation is that 1 in 3, so there's a room full of people, if there's you and your best friend and then your other friend, one of you statistically is having a C-section.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just so, even ACOG, which is the Bible, if you will, for the obstetricians, states that we should do everything that we possibly can and have cesareans be the last resort. But in fact, that's not what's happening. That's not what's taking place.
No, and I mean, I had 2 C-sections, and one was the first one set me down the path for the second one. And that's another thing that's so important, is that you don't realize the very first one that you have, how hard it's going to be to go back. And so that's not something people are fully aware of whenever they head down that path the first go around, is that, wow, you're limiting your options going forward. But kind of in that same realm, let's talk about the rate. So there's some back and forth, but statistically and based on evidence-based birth and improving birth and some other sources, 70% of births are induced and sped up with synthetic drugs. 70%.
That is just crazy. We've gotten to the point where we no longer trust a woman's body. Crystal, you say it all the time. We have the power as women to be CEOs of companies and to run for president, and all these powerful positions, but yet when it comes to birthing our babies, which is what our bodies were designed to do, we're being told as a society that we're not capable.
Right. We don't know what we're doing. We need to just sit back and let the doctor make the decision, or the medical provider, and that, you know, all that matters is a healthy mom and healthy baby. Your birth experience doesn't matter. And that's just sad, because it does matter. It matters for baby, it matters for mom, it matters for breastfeeding, it matters for so many reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the thing is, the ramifications of not being empowered to make those decisions last with us forever. It doesn't just end when we have a healthy baby and a healthy mommy. You know, women have a hard time processing those decisions if they weren't the ones that got to make them. If they didn't get to play an active role in making those decisions, and instead feeling like it was done to them or made for them, then they have to deal with that for a long time afterwards.
Right. And that's all we're here to say, is that you can have an active role in your birth, and your birth doesn't have to happen to you. It can happen with you and for you, which is super important in the way you're going to feel years later, because there's parts of your birth experience, especially if you're a young mom, that I don't think you'll process till later. Whenever you really start to come into your own and realize your own power and your own voice, I think as we mature as women and feel that internal like validation that, wow, I could have done that differently. And then you kind of wrestle with that moving forward.
Exactly. So, you know, that being said, there's a study that I actually just learned about in a different briefing and with the Air Force not that long ago, a couple weeks ago. And it was the Milgram study, the Milgram experiment. And it talks about how we have, as humans, have a tendency to automatically do what someone in a white coat tells us to do, even if it came about hurting ourselves or hurting somebody else. And I fully support the fact that our doctors and obstetricians, they went through school for a very long time to be able to give us care. But sometimes when they've been practicing for a really long time, maybe they're not keeping current with new evidence and new support that supports the mom and her making the decision.
Right. Well, informed choices, right? Like we should have an active role in our birth, and just like we get to make decisions regarding our bodies for family planning and for you know, any other realm, we are in charge of our bodies. It doesn't just go out the window whenever you walk through the L&D floor, labor and delivery floor. You still have autonomy over your body. You still get to make those decisions, and you should be empowered to make them and ask questions. That doesn't mean you go against medical advice, but chances are, if you say, am I okay? Is the baby okay? What is the risk if I don't do it? What is the benefit? They have to answer those questions, stop and answer them, more than just the fear mongering. Well, it'll just be easier. It'll be faster. You don't want a big baby. You know, some of those things that are not actually answering questions, they're more fear-based. They're planting seeds into your mind that you can't do it.
Well, and that's just it. A lot of times we go into the appointments or we go into labor and we don't know what questions to ask. And so when all this information is being thrown at you, especially during labor, when you are dealing with contractions that you're having to concentrate and focus on, and all these questions are coming at you, you're not in the position, one, to answer them. Two, you really know what's being asked of you. And at the moment, yes, of course you care about having a healthy baby and a healthy mommy at that very moment. So we encourage you to educate yourselves beforehand, arm yourselves and your support people with all the information that you could possibly need so that when faced with those decisions, you're confident in making them.
Right.
And so you're not. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so you're not just trying to feel pressured and feel like once you've kind of got a grasp or you've gotten through that part of labor, or you're in the recovery room that like, wait a minute, because I was not thinking clearly, I was overwhelmed, I was in pain, whatever, those decisions that impacted, how you felt. So that's why having a support person who's armed as well as you with the knowledge of how do I get through this in the thick of it? Because it sounds easy when we're talking about it. Oh, well, you ask these questions, or you just say no, or you just say no, thank you. But in the midst of it, you're not, unless you're truly prepared and you practice these things, they aren't going to be second nature. And, whether you have one baby or four, there's only a few times in your life that you're going to give birth. Yeah. And you definitely want to be prepared. And as Michaela and I always say, if you would research and spend as much time on your childbirth plan and education as you do on your stroller, I promise that you will be prepared and happier later than with your stroller purchase.
Right. Because your stroller, you're eventually going to sell or give away. You're going to have your baby for life.
Right. You're going to have your birth experience. That birth story is yours forever. Yeah. And if you didn't have an active role and participation in your birth story, then you're deeply going to be, I think, thinking about this later. And we are women, and we absolutely have the right to make decisions over our bodies and ask to have the birth that is the best birth in the moment. Yeah. Whether that's C-section or a medically, induced birth, but just know that you have options and you can make decisions.
Exactly. So a couple of things that we've touched base on tonight are that 1 in 3 women end up in a cesarean section. That is an alarming amount. So know your options. Find your voice in your pregnancy so that you can make the choices and not be a statistic, but instead be empowered to create and write your own birth story. Right. And then the second is the rate of inductions. Now, Crystal, what exactly do they mean by induction when they say medically induced?
So this is any type of medically induced or sped up. So whether they use Cytotec, which I shared an article that was staggering about using Cytotec, and we'll talk about that later, but or Pitocin, or even stripping your membranes early is a way to get labor going. But medically really means that like you went into labor, maybe you're not going fast enough, so to speak. So what they're saying is 70% of births are either completely induced by you going to the hospital and having some sort of intervention, or you show up and they're not going fast enough, and so then they give you Pitocin. That's an incredible amount of women who are being hooked up to interventions when really, are they medically necessary?
Yeah. I had a nursing student, or a nursing professor, that was one of my childbirth students, and I was also her doula. And she handed me this study that had been done, and it was all about how the medical professionals can help women achieve their desired birth by actually standing back and letting women birth and go through the process, as opposed to being so I mean, we want our medical professionals to be hands-on, but we don't want it to be so hands-on that the monitors and the equipment is driving the outcome. But instead that mom and her body and her baby are the ones that are driving the outcome.
Right. I mean, honestly, birth has become a business. It's very expensive in this country to give birth. And so you have to look at those big, beautiful birthing wings of hospitals were not built on intervention-free births. They were built because of the high insurance payouts for intervention-ridden births that often turn into the 1 in 3 C-sections. That's how those beautiful places are built. Because if we just do hands-off mommy and mommy gives birth,
they don't.
There's not enough money to collect. So you really have to think about it like with an open mind. Like I think a lot of people think about other things like pharmaceutical companies. There's kind of a war on them right now. And I feel like Americans are really waking up to that. But then when we go to birth, it's like, no, we're not going to ask questions. So.
Yeah. And I really do believe that a lot of that comes back to not knowing what to ask. Because it's not, you go into your appointment and you're not given much information except for, yep, you're right on time. You're measuring great. Right on time. So we're not.
Or if you do start asking questions, they say, oh, we'll cover that later.
Yeah. So we just want to encourage you, whether it's with our class, through these videos that you're watching, the information that we post online, we just want to encourage you to seek out that education and to know your options, to really find your voice so that you know what your choices are and have the birth that you desire. So that's our hope for you, and we would love to help you walk through that.
Exactly. So message us or comment below. We'd love to help you and connect with you. And we still have a few openings in our beta course. So we will be back on Sunday. This is the Birth Besties. I'm Crystal. That's Michaela. And we'll see you.
All right. We'll see you guys.